So, you know how the expectation has been more or less set that the Nintendo Switch 2 will launch sometime in 2024, more than likely late in the year. Well, you might as well go and pump your brake because we're now hearing that might no longer be the case. There has been some talk today that Nintendo internally delayed the Switch 2 to 2025, and while I do understand that might be disappointing, we're going to talk about this in detail today, and also why I think this isn't necessarily as bad as what some people are maybe initially thinking. Now, do keep in mind, though, that this is only a rumor for the time being. Nintendo has yet to confirm anything themselves. But this does come from some credible sources, including Eurogamer as well as the Video Game Chronicle. Now, we will also talk about Xbox and PlayStation today. Do stay tuned for that. I do want to talk about some of the Xbox hardware that was teased yesterday. And then also, despite Sony saying that they have no major game franchises planned for 2024, there, however, might be a rather exciting sequel set to release sometime this year. So definitely stay tuned for that, but let's just go and get right into this Switch 2 news here, because I do understand the confusion and disappointment that this might inevitably cause. Everybody, including myself, was expecting a 2024 release. We were expecting a soonish reveal, as possibly as early as next month. And to be fair, a soonish announcement could still happen. This doesn't necessarily rule that out. Yes, it does make it a little bit more unlikely, but what's happening here is that some rumors started to circulate online this morning that Nintendo is going to release the Switch 2 in Q1 of 2025. Now, at first, there was a lot of skepticism. Some of the rumors were coming from outlets that many people weren't aware of. But then this rumor really started to snowball as the day had gone by. Various other people started to come out claiming that they had been hearing something similar as well, until eventually we got big outlets involved like VGC and Eurogamer. We can actually take a look at VGC's post here, which reads, "Since publishing the story, VGC has heard from multiple sources who said Nintendo has told publishers its next console will now launch in Q1 of 2025. According to the sources, third-party game companies were recently briefed on an internal delay in Nintendo's next-generation launch timing from late 2024 to early the following year. One publishing source suggested that the delay was so that Nintendo could prepare stronger first-party software for the console." So, this is really interesting in the sense that Nintendo allegedly is notifying publishers about said delay. You know, that would explain why so many people suddenly have started to hear about this story. People who work for these publishers are probably starting to talk behind the scenes. Something that I've seen a lot online today, though, is the frustration that this might not release this year. Everybody was excited about a 2024 Switch 2 release, and by all indication, you know, it really is time for the next Nintendo hardware. You know, I love the Switch personally, but, you know, it's also been a very long generation, and it would be nice to see them come out with more powerful hardware. Here's the thing, though. Like, I get a 2025 release might sound ominous when people initially hear that. But in reality, the way these rumors are kind of describing the situation, this doesn't actually sound like this lengthy delay. Instead, it's actually a delay of mere months. You know, let's just go and hypothetically say that it now releases in March of 2025 instead of November of this year. So if that were the case, that makes it about a 4-month delay. I don't know about you all, but to me, that's not really all that bad. And, you know, this could even make for a smoother and better launch. I mean, I think we all kind of expect this next Nintendo console to just absolutely fly off shelves. It's probably going to be incredibly popular, especially when it first launches. But with 4 more months to prepare, that also means that theoretically they could have more supply ready to go. So that could maybe tone down some of the annoyances that we have seen with console launches in the past. This could keep it from selling out immediately, and that could just be a better experience for fans in the long run. You also won't have to deal with that holiday rush and a new console combo. You know, that's always a chaotic situation as these devices are such hot items for parents. And, you know, then on top of that, this also means that Nintendo will have more time to polish up their launch lineup, which that right there sounds like the main reason that they're doing this in the first place. So I don't necessarily think that this rumor is strictly negative. I do think that there's some positives that you can take away from a situation like this. Now, I might be singing a completely different tune if this was a longer delay, but This doesn't really sound like a long delay or anything like that. Yes, the year changes, but in reality, it's probably only around a 3 to 4 month delay. And, for that matter, if you care about sales numbers, I know a lot of people have been tracking this throughout the generation, but this does also give the current Switch, which is still selling incredibly well, a chance to catch up with the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo DS. If the current Switch is the only Nintendo console this holiday, then it'll for sure eclipse that 150 million units sold mark. That is such a coveted number. It'll be the third console to ever do that, and that will really put the Switch in position to become the best-selling console ever made. And that's kind of exciting in its own way. Now, as for the Switch successor, though, I do think that this does kind of beg the question if this is actually true, because, keep in mind that this is still just a rumor for the time being. For all we know, these insiders could have gotten a bad tip, or Nintendo could have planned it themselves to throw people off. I'm not saying that that is what's happening here, but who really knows is all I'm trying to say. Hypothetically, however, if it is true, well, then how long will fans have to wait for a Switch 2 reveal? Suddenly that March reveal doesn't exactly seem too realistic. As you all may have already known, I've always been skeptical of that March reveal in the first place, but this really kind of makes that announcement seem unlikely. I mean, technically, okay, yes, they could announce it at any point. The PlayStation 5 was announced through a blog post, I want to say a full year before it released, so you can't really rule out anything, but just considering how well the Switch is still selling, I would think that Nintendo is probably planning its successor's announcement very, very carefully. This new timeline here, to me, kind of suggests that an announcement could be made later on in the year. And with that, I think that also means that we're going to get probably a lot more unsubstantiated rumors throughout the year as people continue to latch on every little rumor that they possibly can, to get more information for the Switch 2. Let me know what you all think about all of this, though. Is this disappointing for you or not? I'm very much on the side that, yes, it is disappointing. I would have liked to have gotten it this year, and I really want to see its reveal. But it's also not necessarily a big deal either, just because this doesn't sound like it's going to be a lengthy delay. It's going to be about 3 to 4 months. Okay, so let's go and talk about Xbox and their future hardware. That is one of the things that they teased yesterday, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because there is something very interesting currently happening. We'll get into that here in just a second, but it sounds like they have at least 3 things planned. They have new hardware apparently planned for this holiday. I've seen some predictions that could be the new Xbox Series X refresh that leaked at the FTC trial, or it could also be their new controller, which also leaked at that same trial. Xbox has publicly talked about a new controller and their desire to kind of emulate what PlayStation has done this generation with the DualSense. I think this could be the year when they finally give Xbox players that haptic feedback. I know not everybody is necessarily anticipating that, but I think that it would actually be a pretty cool announcement. I personally really like the technology that the DualSense introduced this generation, and this really just kind of feeds that logic that I always talk about on the channel. Competition breeds excellence, and this here would be one such example. It's them really pushing each other to consistently better themselves, and that makes for a better overall experience for you, the customers. So personally, again, I hope this happens. I just kind of hope that it doesn't skyrocket the price of their controllers. Well, we'll kind of see about all of that. Now, of course, they also announced a brand new home console. Their next generation Xbox apparently is going to be a massive leap in power, the biggest leap in power that we'll have ever seen. We'll kind of see how all that works out, but I think the most interesting device that they're working on is something that they're kind of hinting at right now, and that is maybe a handheld Xbox console. Jez Corden here recently wrote a big article about an Xbox handheld, and interestingly, Phil Spencer like that tweet. Now, he later on removed that once it started to make the news, but then in an interview with The Verge, he also mentioned that they're working on some kind of unique hardware. We can see his comment here, which reads, "I'm very proud of the work that the hardware team is doing, not only for this year, but also into the future. We're really thinking about creating hardware that sells to gamers because of the unique aspects of the hardware. It's kind of an unleashing of the creative capability of our hardware team that I'm really excited about. We see a lot of opportunity in different types of devices, and we'll share specifics on our future hardware plans as soon as we are ready." So he is talking about different types of devices, not just home consoles. And while that doesn't necessarily confirm a new Xbox handheld per se, it does kind of make sense when you start to think about it. We are starting to see the rise of these handheld consoles. The technology is getting better and better. Nintendo has been ultra successful when it comes to handheld gaming, but then you also have all of these PC gaming handhelds like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. In fact, Phil Spencer himself travels with the ROG Ally. He likes handheld gaming and he considers it a part of the Xbox ecosystem. So for sure, I think this is an avenue that they're probably going to explore behind the scenes. They're going to experiment with these Xbox handhelds and whether or not it makes sense for them. They're already looking for ways to improve the Windows handheld experience, and I imagine they're also looking to whether or not a first-party handheld would make sense for them. Now, whether anything actually makes it to the market, that's a completely different story, but I do think that there's a realistic chance that the next Xbox family of consoles, yes, might include a handheld companion. In fact, maybe not just Xbox. We've also recently heard rumors that PlayStation might be planning something similar. We talked about this a week or two back. So the handheld market might get really interesting here in the coming years. We might end up having the most robust handheld lineup in the history of hardcore gaming. Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, and Valve all might have their own handheld options. Okay, so speaking of PlayStation a moment ago, I do want to talk about something that I'm personally very excited about right now. So we all saw the report a couple days back. Sony very specifically told fans to not expect any major PlayStation franchises to release in their next fiscal year. Major franchises being the key words. See, people are kind of reading that part wrong. Sony did not say that they have 0 games planned for 2024. That's not what they said. Rather, they're telling people to not expect any major franchises this year, which means don't go in expecting games like God of War, Spider-Man, or even the next Ghost of Tsushima. However, we could still see some smaller games this year shine, which apparently includes a possible sighting for a new Astrobot game. So this is coming from Jeff Grubb, which said that he had heard that a new Astro game might happen this year. Now, personally, that is extremely exciting for somebody like me. I'll tell you this right now. A new Astrobot game, to me, is more exciting than Spider-Man 3. It's more exciting than Venom or really even Wolverine. For me, I prefer Astrobot as opposed to all of those games. I thought the VR Astrobot game was absolutely amazing. And then Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation 5. That game genuinely blew me away. I think those two games are secretly among the best 3D platformers ever made, and I think that we need more games like them. We constantly talk about this, but Sony has all these big AAA games, but I want to see them experiment more with these smaller scale games as well. So I'm excited to see what Team Asobi does next. I think the only thing that kind of causes me to pause is that we don't really know what device they're working on just yet. I mean, realistically, they could be working on PlayStation VR 2. Team Asobi does tend to center their games around a specific type of hardware. You look at something like Astrobot, which centers on PlayStation VR, or Astro's Playroom, which centers on the DualSense controller. So they could be working on PSVR 2. And as much as I love Astrobot on VR, for me, I really want to see Team Asobi get the chance to make a full-fledged traditional game. I'm not sure if that's what's actually going to happen, but that's what I'm hoping for. I want to see them get a real opportunity to make their biggest game ever, something that they can sell to a large audience, and unfortunately, PSVR 2 just doesn't really have a large audience. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens with all this, but I'm crossing my fingers that we will get an announcement sooner rather than later. Now, another game that I want to talk about is Alan Wake 2. This was my game of the year last year, and I'm happy to say that Alan Wake 2 was dubbed a big success for Remedy Entertainment. They announced it's officially their fastest-selling game ever made, selling 1.3 million units in its first 4 months. In comparison, it sold 50% more units than Control did in half the time. So while 1.3 million units doesn't sound like a lot for a game of this size, for Remedy, it is actually performing very well, and the CEO did say that they expect it to sell well over time. He mentioned that Alan Wake 2 has already recouped a significant part of its development and marketing expenses. Again, it is their fastest selling game, and Control actually wound up selling 4 million units over its life. They're expecting similar results for Alan Wake 2. I think the only thing for me, though, is that I do kind of worry about its reach. Right now, Alan Wake 2 is a digital-only game, and it's also not on the most popular PC storefront. It is an Epic Games Store exclusive because that is their publisher, and I do kind of worry that will bite them in the long run. I hope they'll be capable of porting it over to Steam, which, that would be a massive help for this game. And also, hopefully, they can partner up with somebody to push some physical games out in the wild. If they can do those two things, and plus, they also have DLC in development, I think that will really catapult this game in the long run. Now, one last thing that I want to briefly talk about today is a game leak that I know a lot of people have been requesting. I mean, I've been hearing this from a lot of you on this very channel, and it sounds like it's actually going to happen. According to Insider Gaming, which they have been very reputable in the past, a new first-person Star Wars Mandalorian game is in development over at Respawn Entertainment. Of course, they worked on the Jedi Fallen games, which are often considered the greatest single-player Star Wars games ever made, and now apparently they're working on their bread and butter, a first-person shooter set in the world of Star Wars. It's being described as a fast-paced, linear game. It's not open world, which to me, honestly, I actually like that. I've said this 100 times on the channel, and I'll go and say it again here. Open world does not mean better. In fact, I actually prefer linear experiences in a lot of situations, if not even most, because the level design tends to be better. The big thing here, though, is that don't go in expecting this Mandalorian game to release anytime soon. It is allegedly still in early development, so we're still likely years away from playing this game ourselves. But I don't know. I mean, you Star Wars fans out there have a lot to look forward to. They really are going all in on gaming right now, which includes Outlaws this year. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. Hope everybody enjoys their weekend, but till next time, peace out.